author of The Thing Beneath the Thing, as well as Grieve, Breathe, Receive, host of the Craft and Character podcast, and a personal coach to communicators discovering their unique voice and taking their skills to the next level. He currently serves as lead pastor of Christ Church of Oak Brook, which is pretty recent, right? In the last 6 months or so. Steve lives in the Chicago area with his wife and 2 kids. When he's not hanging with his family and friends or working, you'll probably find him cheering on his favorite team, the University of Michigan. Again, like I said, I like Steve. I think he's going to be fantastic. Might be one red flag there, but that's okay. I don't know what it is, because next week we have another great speaker. He's a Northwestern guy, and I'm like, last year we had so many Northwestern guys, and we Michigan guy. Where's my Illini guys? It's not a good sign, right? Don't have enough men of God in the Illini family. I know, right? There you go. No, I'm super excited. One of the ways we got plugged in with Steve as well. Many of you guys know Steve from the past, but Steve spoke with PJ's group in Hinsdale last fall in their session. The church he's at now, Christ Church of Oak Brook, it's on York Road, right? Just like 10 minutes north of the Hinsdale men's group. So I think it's also just super encouraging for Steve, like, be there, see this group of Hinsdale men that we grew out of, right? We grew out of like that exact video of a guy like PJ speaking life into me and saying, hey, start something like this. So he got to see something awesome in Hinsdale of men coming together. They're in their 13th year. And now what they took because of their boldness and their promptings following the Lord to encourage myself. It was from another man's encouragement, not from my own doing. This man encouraged me to start something like this. And look at this room here today. So I think it's really cool for Steve now to come. He's got to speak at Hinsdale. Now he's here in Barrington to see this group of godly men that want to gather together and be sharpened. So I'm excited for Steve to sharpen us. Come on up to the stage, Steve. Welcome him, guys.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Well, I get a little nervous when you hand out eggs to Greg Hecker right before you speak. So, well, it's an honor to be here, and really, truly grateful for you all getting up early to come. And I begin with just a question. Do you ever wonder why people do what they do? Like, why did he post that? Why did he say that? Why did she respond in that way? Maybe the better question isn't why others do what they do. Maybe the better question is, why do you do what you do? Where you just are like, oh, why did I say that? Why did I get defensive with my wife? Why did I act in that way? Or why did I go to that kind of counterfeit God? Why? And if you ever find yourself in that position, I just want to remind you of one of the most beautiful verses. It's one of the most human verses. It comes from Romans chapter 7, verse 15. And the Apostle Paul, who writes the majority of the New Testament, says, I do not understand what I do. For the good I want to do, I just don't do. But the thing I hate, I do. And every time my wife reminds me of something I forget to do, I quote that verse. I just say to her, babe, I'm sorry. I don't understand what I do. The good I want to do, I just don't do. But the thing I hate, I do. And that's pretty remarkable that Paul would say this. With all of the writings on the Holy Spirit, you get through Romans and the theology, you get through Ephesians, and you have the sense of like your identity in Christ. And yet there's this moment where he's saying, I don't even understand why I do what I do. Why? And I think for many of us, it's not like we can just go and do whatever we want and then go on Twitter and be like, Romans 7:15, y'all. And as being a pastor for 25 years, I've never met anybody who's come into my office and said, today's the day. Today's the day I decimate my character. Today's the day that I absolutely obliterate every relationship. Today's the day that I put my family through something that they didn't deserve. And yet in every arena, from politics to athletics to churches, to the marketplace, to schools, every single day, I find myself wondering, why? And I think for many of us, the beauty of emotional intelligence is that we can't just literally say like, I don't understand anymore. Because the world's like, well, figure it out. Why did you turn to that? Why did you run to that? Why did you go there to soothe and to escape? And so that's what I want to talk about today. I really love that Ryan Leak video. He's an amazing guy. I think that the coach of the Celtics, when you lose 2 games in the fourth quarter, when you're up by 20 to Jalen Brunson, I think he's probably yelling at Jason Tatum again, get up. But we'll see if Tatum can actually do it. But when I moved to Chicago, I grew up in Southern California. I was really excited. I was a WGN kid, so I was a Cubs fan. I loved the Blackhawks. I loved the Bears growing up. I obviously loved Michigan. I loved like Big Ten country. I was excited to go to Wrigley. I was excited about deep dish pizza. But the one thing that nobody ever told me about were potholes. We don't have those in California. We have a lot of other things, but we did not have potholes. And the truth is, they're everywhere here. And I remember one time I was driving downtown. I think I was listening to Sylvie and Waddle and Sylvie, and all of a sudden I hit one of these craters, and I knew right away, oh man, I got a flat tire. So I pulled the car over and I inspected. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! This is not what I want. But I remembered that someone told me that if you dial 311 and report a pothole, and if the pothole to the city of Chicago has been reported and they haven't dealt with it, they will pay for the damages to your vehicle, which is no wonder why the city of Chicago might be going bankrupt, but that's another sermon. But like, I find myself going, 311, oh, I'm gonna call, maybe. And I was like, Lord, please. I call, I'm the first one to report this pothole. But then it dawns on me as a teacher, if I dial 911 as a kid, I call first responder. If I dial 411 as a kid, I remember I could get the girl's number that I liked in 8th grade. And I'm like, 311? Ma'am, you got your own 3-digit number. You must be a big deal. How many potholes have you filled in to get your own 3-digit number? And she's like, well, the Chicago Tribune's just done a story on us. I was like, tell me more. She says that in the first 100 days of 2018, she goes, do you want to take a guess for how many potholes we've filled in? I was like, not really. She's like, no, take a guess. I say 5,000. She's like, a little bit more. I say 10,000. She says a little bit more. I say 15,000. She says a little bit more. I look at her on the phone. I say, ma'am, you sound like my dad. You're asking me a question and you already know the answer. Just tell me the answer. And she goes, one more guess. I'm like, I don't know, 25,000. She's like, wrong, 137,000. And if you go to the city of Chicago's website right now, you can totally do this if you don't believe me. They have a pothole tracker. Like literally, they are tracking their work. This is the thing that they track, the city of Chicago. And so if you understand potholes, literally, like water freezes and the asphalt is not like our sweatpants. It does not have that elasticity. And so a crater is created. And when a crater is created, they just come up, they look at it. Yep, and all of a sudden, they find themselves just kind of filling that in, and then they'll move on. But sometimes they will come up to a pothole, and they'll realize a pothole wasn't caused by inclement weather. It's actually something that's happening underneath the surface. And if they don't deal with that leaky sewage pipe, or they don't deal with the erosion underneath, a pothole will become a sinkhole. And this is what happened in the city of Chicago. A 72-year-old man just went straight down. Millions of dollars of damage. Because a pothole became a sinkhole. And if you're in the marketplace, if you're in a family, you have neighbors, you have kids, you have friends, here's the truth. Every single one of you has potholes. And the work for us as men is not to have those potholes become sinkholes. Because those sinkholes don't just affect you, but they affect everyone around you. And oftentimes when this does happen, and it does happen, many of us, we didn't even understand. We didn't understand why. Why was I drawn to this? Why was I led to this? Why? And the truth is, every single one of us in this room is an addict. We don't like hearing that, but it's true. Just some of us have more socially acceptable addictions, like work, or busyness, or credit card debt. Like you can then look at like the whole spectrum, but if we're looking towards anything but God to soothe us and make us feel okay, I have to say, It's dangerous. It's dangerous. So why do I say this? The thing beneath the thing has been language that I've used over the last 15 years because it's been super helpful for me because it's never about this. It's always about something else. And because every one of us has these potholes, we're going to find ourselves rubbing up against other people, talking to other people, and when we talk with other broken and beautiful people, they're actually going to say something to us that is probably, or do something, or look at us, or not follow through on something that is actually going to be getting really close to our pothole. And when that happens, all of a sudden, there's all of this energy that comes through us that we want to actually do something with. And I think this is fascinating because I remember a number of years ago, still living in California, I came home from a teaching prep meeting. I had this whole sermon series planned. And I remember pitching this idea and this guy shut my idea down. And I was livid. I was so frustrated, got in my car, drove through all this traffic, get home. I find myself telling my wife this story. And my wife's like, And I'm like, what does mean? Have my back. And she's like, well, isn't God so kind? I'm like, what do you mean God's so kind? This guy was a jerk. Like, have my back. Why was God so kind? And she says, God's so kind because for 30 years, you haven't had the courage to actually deal with a wound from someone who really, really hurt you. And God in his infinite kindness keeps bringing people into your life. The real question is today the day you're going to have the courage to face that wound? You know what I said to her? Get behind me, Satan. No, I didn't say that to her. No, but she's right. She's right. And here's the truth. For many of us, when we find ourselves getting triggered, we use it as an escape to act out. We use it as an escape to go to something to make us feel okay. But it's actually a clue. It's a clue to a pothole. It's a clue to a wound. It's a clue to an area in our life that desperately, desperately needs to be brought before the Lord. So if you have a Bible, turn with me to Esther chapter 3, which I'm sure you all were there this morning. But Esther chapter 3, and who said Luke for Theophilus? You were right. You were right. You said that? My man. I got a Cubs hat for you if you need it. But Theophilus and Acts were written or Acts and Luke was written to Theophilus. So just if you need more coffee, go talk to him. So anyways, Esther chapter 3, but we're going to start at the very end. Most preachers, they want to start from verse 1 and make their way all the way down. We're going to go backwards. We're going to start the last sentence, a little bit memento style, and we're going to go and just kind of pick this story up. Look what it says in Esther chapter 3, verse 15, the last sentence. The king, which was a man by the name of King Xerxes, and Haman, who was his right-hand man, sat down to drink. But the city of Susa was bewildered. So you have the king and Haman sit down to drink while the entire city is bewildered. And the word bewildered in the original language, Hebrew, it literally means utterly confused by the decisions and choices that have been made. And maybe you felt that. Maybe you've been utterly confused by the decisions and choices that have been made in a myriad of arenas in our day. Maybe it's from your boss. Maybe it's from a family member. Maybe it's from a friend. We find ourselves just absolutely bewildered by choices. And the truth is, People are often bewildered by the choices we make. But the question is, why is the city of Susa bewildered? Go up to verse 13. It says this: dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. So why is the city of Susa bewildered? Because a genocide has been decreed. And shortly after what took place in Rwanda, I had the privilege to go over there. And what happened in Rwanda in less than 100 days, the UN reports that between the two tribes of the Hutu and the Tutsis, that almost 1 million people lost their life. Just absolute ravaged pain, trauma. To this day, you will walk and you'll just see people who are missing limbs just because of the violence of what happened in Rwanda. But the question is, how does a genocide get pulled off? And who would actually do this? Go up with me to verse 8. It says this: then Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of all other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will even give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury. Now here's what's fascinating, is King Xerxes' grandfather was a man by the name of Cyrus. Cyrus is actually the only one in scripture who is known as the Lord's anointed, who is actually not a believer. There was a prophecy that was written in Isaiah 44 that there was this man named Cyrus who is anointed, and anointed in Hebrew is where we get the word Messiah, and that this anointed one would actually free the people. And so when the Jewish people were stuck in exile in Babylon, what ends up happening is this Persian king starts to come. And the story goes that these Jewish men began to run out with the scrolls of Isaiah to show. And when Cyrus saw this, he allowed the Jewish people to go back to J-Town, to Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple. And he literally said, I will bankroll it. And so this man, to this day, his first speech at that moment in Babylon, they call it the first Declaration of Human Rights. That speech is written on a cylinder that was found, and it's in the British Museum, but it also stands right outside the UN, where Security Council, where wars are being decided or trying to be prevented. And the whole idea is that this man was actually tolerant. He would take in leaders from other countries and other nations, and he would invite them to be part of his cabinet. But now, Haman saying, hey, your grandfather, he wouldn't even tolerate these people. They're so terrible. There's this group of people, they are just doing things differently. We don't have to take care of them. And to help you out, Xerxes, I'm actually going to give you $10,000 to try and fund this. And Xerxes says, keep the money and do as you please. And I find myself just often thinking about this, because what would cause Haman to actually want to see a genocide happen? What would cause him to get to a point where he's like, you know what, this is the best, most rational decision possible? If you look in Esther chapter 3, we'll go to the very beginning, verse 1. It says this: after these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha. And if you're ever reading the Bible publicly and you don't know how to say something, or pronounce it, just read it quickly with authority and move on. Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor, higher than all of the other nobles. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai is a new character. He's a Jewish man, would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why do you disobey the king's command? Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Now, this fascinates me because one dude won't Tebow and kneel down and show him some sense of honor. Haman finds himself enraged to the point where he's like, I don't just want to kill you. I want to kill all of you. Now, why do I say this? Because the truth is, I think we've all had moments as men where we've just lost our ever-loving mind. I remember I was in Grand Rapids. I was driving home from my grandparents' house. Snow is flurries are dropping. I got my 9-month-old in the back seat at the time. I got my wife in the front seat. We're driving in a little 2002 Honda Civic, and little flurries are dropping when all of a sudden some chunk of ice hits my windshield. And I just try to control the car. It kind of slips and slides, and all of a sudden just this like anxiousness comes through my body, and I'm just driving, and then it dawns on me, that didn't come from the sky, someone threw that. And so I flip a U-turn, and my wife's like, what are you doing? And I was like, someone threw a chunk of ice at us, and I'm just looking out into a field, and I see someone start to run, so I pull the car over, and my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm gonna go find them. And so I run across 4 lanes of traffic. There's an embankment. I think I can jump it. I can't, and I land halfway in like freezing cold water. And now I really lose my ever-loving mind. I'm like, I see you. I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna catch you. I've called 911. I literally am so grateful there wasn't social media at this moment. And I just start taking off running. And I am running through this open field that leads into the suburban neighborhood. And I'm chasing as fast as I can, soaking wet pants. And then I get into this suburban neighborhood. And because I watch CSI, I know what to do. I run to the middle of the street. I just close my eyes. I just start to listen. And then all of a sudden, a few doors down, a garage closes, and I just like run to this house. Bang on the door. All of a sudden, an older gentleman opens the door, and I said, hey, by chance, you college student, son, someone, just run into your garage? He's like, yeah, my grandson and his friend. Can I have a word with them? And he's like, sure. So he closes the door, and I'm just sitting there. And it's in this moment where I feel like maybe you've had these moments where the Lord just whispers to you. I feel like the Lord just whispered, what is going on? And at this moment, I am a middle school pastor. And so the door opens, and it's 2 6th graders that are shaking like puppies. And I'm like, I've just let my wife and my 9-month-old on the side of the road in sort of a snow blizzard. I've just run. I'm soaking wet. Now they're frozen jeans. And I literally lost my ever-loving mind. And I was about to just throw down on these kids. And all of a sudden they look at me, and I just look at them, and I go, nice shot. And I walk away. And as I'm walking back, I realize, man, what just happened? And maybe you've had those moments where you're like, what? That's not me. That's not who I want to be. The good I want to do, I just don't do. But the thing I hate, I do. And the truth is, why did I do that? It's because I was leaving my grandparents' house. It was the last time I was going to see them because I was moving back to California to work at a church. The people who were going to buy our house in 2008 in Grand Rapids backed out. And I was feeling all of this stress financially. My dad had leukemia. I felt all of this guilt for leaving Michigan. And all of a sudden, some 6th graders choose to throw a chunk of ice, and now I have this sense of release. And this, my friends, is why getting to the thing beneath the thing matters. Thing is an acronym for me. The first one is that the T is triggers. And every day, the trigger is the setup that sets you off. It's like a great comedian. A great comedian wants to take you moving in this direction, and you are moving in this direction, and then all of a sudden they turn it. And the way that they turn it creates a release of laughter if they're good at what they do. The same thing is every one of you, you have an expectation for how the day is going to go. Efficient. You're gonna get on the train. You're gonna get into the city. You're gonna go to your work, and the people are gonna actually have their jobs and their work done, and this thing is gonna happen, and that person's gonna call you right on time, and that person's gonna show up, and then all of a sudden, none of that happens. And for many of us, that triggers us. And what happens is then all of this energy goes through our body that needs to go somewhere. And for most of us, in 25 years of ministry, I've realized that most of us look for a hideout. And this is just the hideouts are these metaphorical places we go to escape the sadness, the pain. This is just what we turn to. And if you think of the story of the golden calf, you have Moses and Joshua up on the mountain talking with Yahweh. And the people are so filled with anxiety, they don't know what to do. And so they take all of the gold because they got to create something to transfer this anxiety on. And they create this golden calf, and they just literally are just transferring that anxiety onto that thing. And we do this. We do this with food. We do this when we go and buy something. We do this when we try to work longer. We do this in a myriad of different ways. Whatever we use to actually make us feel okay other than God is an idol, is a hideout. For some of us, it's not the hideout. It's the it's when we get triggered, all of a sudden insecurity kicks on. Like, why did I say that? What's wrong with me? And all of a sudden, for some of us, the lies of the enemy just begin to go through our mind. And all of a sudden, in our insecurity, we just find ourselves getting lower and lower and lesser and lesser. And truly, what's wild is in our insecurity, most of us, what we'll end up doing is putting on a mask. And this is where we get the word hypocrite. It was a word for acting back in the days of Greece and Rome. And these actors would be on stage, these hypocrites, and they would have a backpack. And in the backpack, they would have these masks, and they would be like multiple characters where they would put on a mask. And oftentimes in our insecurity, when we find ourselves dropping down, we get into a place of wanting to people please. I gotta make all these people like me. And if they like me, then everything's okay. Or, you know what? I gotta perform. And if I perform good enough, then all of a sudden they're gonna like me. Or I gotta pretend that I know what I'm doing. And if I can pretend that I know what I'm doing, then I'll be okay. Or I have to perfect, and I have to be perfect. And if I'm not perfect, I won't be loved. And all of that is insecurity. And if you grew up in a home like I did, that as a child of an alcoholic, you also saw insecurity show up in a form of power. And I remember there would be moments where a family member would lose control of the house, and they would just slam their fist on the table and start verbally abusing. And for the longest time, I thought that was power, but I realize now, it's just insecurity, because they didn't know how to say, I don't know what to do in this situation. And so what they try to do is try to create fear and power up, and to try and get everyone to act in a certain way. And deep down, that's just insecurity. And for some of us as men, that when we get triggered, we go to one of those masks that we put on: people pleasing, performing, pretending, perfecting, or we try to power up. The other one that often happens when we get triggered is we find ourselves creating narratives. And these are false stories about other people. Now, it's fine if it's about the Green Bay Packers, and it's fine if it's about the Ohio State Buckeyes, but besides that, I'm sorry. Trigger, you got triggered, I get it. Yeah, that's good. But I think what's fascinating is oftentimes we'll see people get triggered, and then watch the language that comes out of their mouth. Like all of those people, like that whole department, that whole side of the family, a whole group of politicians, that whole group of pastors, that whole group, whatever it is, oftentimes we generalize and we create a narrative. And literally what we're doing is playing with Play-Doh. Because Play-Doh is the sense where you can actually just shape and form. And when we gossip or we create a story about another person, literally all we're doing is shaping and forming what we think that this person is or this group of people are, and getting other people like King Xerxes to actually believe this is who they are. And you don't have to tolerate them. And this is just happening. Billions of dollars every single day are being pumped into the media streams to have us divided from one another. It's not what Jesus prayed in John 17. He prayed that we would be united. He prayed that we'd be echad, that we'd be one. That we would not actually be the divided states of America, but that we would be actually united in Christ. What's wild about this is when you think about triggers, you all probably have hideouts, insecurities, and narratives. And so do the people you work with. And this is why it's so important as a leader to actually know this. When I was playing basketball, I played college basketball. Play's not the right word. I sat the bench, but I got free shoes. But when I grew up playing, we didn't have these Euro 7-footers who could dribble the ball up and do all this stuff. Big men just lived underneath the paint. And you never gave the big man the ball on a fast break because they would dribble off their feet. And I think what's interesting is sometimes when we see coworkers or family members actually finding themselves acting in a way that they don't even understand, they're not even self-aware of, it's because somehow someone got close to their trigger. And for us, I think it's really, really important to go, hey, to know from our coworkers what triggers you, from our spouse, what triggers you, from our kids, what triggers you. What's your hideout? What's the insecurity? What's the lie of the enemy that you actually are choosing to believe? And what's the narratives that you create? And it's here where there is one place that you can go to actually make you whole, holy, and spiritually healthy, and that's that's grace. What's amazing about grace is oftentimes we think grace is literally about something we receive to get from here up there. But the beauty of grace and the beauty of what God was longing to do was to get up there into here. It's trying to get heaven to invade your heart, your mind, your body, your soul. Just hoping that you would become someone who is whole, not fractured, but holy, set apart, and spiritually healthy. And John Wesley, who's this, kind of founder of the Wesleyan Church, he believed that there were 3 types or stages of grace. And one of those stages, the second one, was known as sanctifying grace. And sanctification is a word we don't often use in the church today, but sanctification is the process at which we become whole and holy and spiritually healthy. Sanctification is us opening our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our souls to the Holy Spirit, who begins to actually go after all of those potholes so that they don't become sinkholes. Dallas Willard will say that grace is opposed to earning, but it's never opposed to effort. And what's interesting about grace, sometimes I think we just receive it, but I don't have to do anything. The truth is, we have to get grace into every pothole, every atom, every molecule, every story, every point of trauma, every act. And it's in that, when we live in that way, we're going to understand, there's a better way. There's a better way. What triggers you? You're like, I do. Maybe for some of you, you're like, hey, what triggers you? Where do you go when you get triggered? What lies do you believe when you get triggered about yourself that just aren't true? What narratives actually come to mind when you get triggered? And what if when you got triggered, instead of becoming somebody else or losing your ever-loving mind or doing something that you don't fully understand why you did, what if you just got curious and just stepped back? Before running to something else, running to your phone, running to anything to escape, or actually ruminating on some insecure lie and belief from the enemy, what if you just sat with it? And this is where oftentimes for men it's really, really difficult, because they're like, well, you want me to sit in my pain? A little bit. Remember when you were skateboarding or riding your bike and all of a sudden you fell and you came inside and your knee was all bloodied, and your mom looked at it and then she grabbed that ugliest color of brown, big jar of hydrogen peroxide. And you're like, what's this? And then she's like, just shh, I'll take care of it. And then she like opens it up and she pours the whole thing on your knee, and your knee just gets all pussy white. And you're like, I'm going to lose my leg. Like you're freaking out. And then they clean it up and they put a Band-Aid over it. And then what ends up happening is like the next day, you got to come back and take the Band-Aid off, add some peroxide, put a new Band-Aid on. I think if we could actually get to a point where we could just spend some time with those potholes. I'm not saying to spend 2 hours with it. I'm not saying spend a day. I'm not saying you got to go on some retreat. I'm just literally saying, what if you could just look at some of these areas and just go, maybe if I just allowed a little bit of like the Holy Spirit's hydrogen peroxide just to come and clean this out. Because if I don't deal with this, that pothole could become a sinkhole that doesn't just affect me. Every week I have this little practice, because in the book of Proverbs it says, guard your heart, because everything flows from it. And when I think about guarding, I think we're really good at guarding our Instagram login. We're good at guarding our social security number. We're good at guarding our bank account information. How good are we at guarding our heart? And for many of us, we just let anything land. We let anything land in our heart. We let anything land in our mind. And I remember my Greek professor one time saw me struggling with this, and he just said, Steve, he used to be the air traffic controller at O'Hare Airport. And he said, you want to know what real power is? Real power is telling American that they can't take off. Real power is rerouting United to Milwaukee. Real power is just grounding planes. That's real power. He says, you know what's amazing is you are the air traffic controller of your mind and your heart. You choose to let whatever is coming, what the enemy's throwing at you, you choose to let that land in your head and your mind. And he's like, you need to reroute that. He's like, where are you going to reroute it? And no joke, in college I said, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Columbus, Ohio, because I can't stand those two. And my professor was like, I was thinking the cross. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But I think what's amazing is we just let it land, and we let it stir, we let it fester. And so what you have to end up doing is something I'll just quickly do this and then I'll be done. Practice that I'll do is Monday or Sunday night, I usually look at the last 168 hours of the week before. And I'll go, I'll play it back. Was there a moment where I actually acted in a way that wasn't true of the man I want to be? The husband, the father, the leader, the pastor, the friend, the Christ follower. I just play it back. No shade, no shame. Almost like I'm watching game tape. I just watch it and I just replay that situation with no shame, no shade, just trying to get curious what led to that. And then once I played it back, I play it out. What I mean play it out is I now imagine, because the enemy's crafty and the enemy's going to actually, if he knows that he got you, he's going to try and get you again. I want to actually see and pretend putting myself in that same situation, whether hungry, stressed, overwhelmed, tired, whatever it is. And now I imagine Christ almost like a Coach K figure. And Christ is like right beside me just going, okay, how are we going to do this? What's the play? When the enemy comes at you, what's the play? How are you going to honor me? How are you going to lean in me? How are you going to actually do it a different way? And I just journal about that. You play it back, you play it out. Number 3, you have to play it honest. You have to play it honest. And most men, how you doing? Good. How's life? Great. How's your marriage? Fine. How are the Bears? Terrible. It's all the same answers. And you get to a point where you have to go, no, I'm going to play it honest. I'm going to be honest, human. Man, it's really hard. I got triggered and I ran to this. I got